This module aims at discussing Williamson's theory of managerial discretion. After learning this module, you will be able to understand separation of ownership and control, the managerial discretionary model along with utility function, various concepts of profits used in managerial discretionary model, how to model managerial utility in absence of management slack, graphical representation of the model. Now let us have a brief introduction of this module. Nowadays, profit maximization is not the main goal of firm, rather behavior and role of managers are considered as main factors for successfully deciding how much output to be produced once market price is decided. Even if firms work towards maximization of profit, price and output determination entirely depends upon who is conducting the business. In view of this one overarching question that bring attention of the economist is whether the owner of the firm or their appointed manager directs the control of all the business activities. Generally, owner of the firm takes decisions of price, output and other business activities if the firm is small and there is individual partnership and proprietorship. But nowadays, many firms are like joint stock companies and they are called corporations. In these corporations, it has been observed that there is a separation between ownership and management. Generally, shareholders are considered as owner of the joint stock companies who bear the business risk, whereas decision on price and output determination is undertaken by hired managers. Thus, an individual proprietor, being the only owner of this firm, tries to maximize profit, whereas manager of a joint stock company don't bother regarding profit maximization of the company. Thus, in the context of large corporations, the importance of profit maximization theory has lost its momentum significantly in recent years due to development of managerial theories. The managerial theories, which have been playing a significant role in focusing separation of ownership and control, are developed by Williamson and Maris. These managerial theories don't accept the validity of profit maximization hypothesis. The role of managers in these firms are not motivated by profit maximization. Managers' decision regarding price and output determination vary considerably from those having profit maximization as the main objective.
In this module, first we shall discuss the concept of ownership and control and then shall discuss the Williamson's managerial discretion theory, separation of ownership and control. The concept of separation of ownership and control dates back to Adam Smith, who have first given some reference of it in his work The Wealth of Nations in 1776 by saying that the trade of joint stock company is always managed by a court of directors. This court indeed is frequently subject in many respects to the control of a general court of proprietors. The directors of such companies, however, being the managers rather of other people's money than of their own, it cannot well be expected that they should watch over it with the same anxious vigilance with which the partners in a private carpentry frequently watch over their own. Since then, the separation of ownership and control has been conceptualized by various economists in different contexts. The separation of ownership and control is a principal agent problem of industrial organization in which publicly held enterprises or corporations are associated with some situations where the residual claimant, that is, shareholders, hardly possess any control over decision of management. The principal agent problem basically occurs in large publicly held corporations. There are many shareholders, that is principals, who have share in these large corporations, and these corporations are managed by the directors, that is the agents. The directors of these corporations are elected by shareholders. Once elected, responsibilities of directors are to oversee and manage the corporation. This organizational form plays an important role and facilitate in the funding of the firm. The role of the corporation is to issue shares. The corporation being a big entity of large number of shareholders get access to large supply of funds and financial capitals easily, which is not generally possible in case of single proprietor or in case of few partners of a single firm. It has been observed empirically that with the added protection of limited liability, investors needed to diversify across many firms and business sectors are allowed in broad-based equity market. In this case, investors have limited liability because they have no risk other than losing their investment. The shareholders' personal assets cannot be used by corporations' creditors. However, in modern corporation, shared ownership does not mean shared control. Shareholders in no way are associated with management of modern public corporations. Thus, they don't have the right to manage such corporations. Association of shareholders in day-to-day management decision of large public corporation would be a costly affair. Many a times becomes impractical and as a result give rise to mismanagement and poor decision. Almost every corporation has a cadre of professional managers who act on behalf of shareholders. These professional managers are responsible for decision making and control of the corporation. In large corporations, top management play important role in decision making process. The major problem here is that the shareholders have no control on the management's performance in decision-making process. There are two obstacles that come in way of shareholders in exercising voting power over the top management. They are: first problem is that though the shareholders have the option of using proxy in directing management on how to vote the shareholders' share, but the voting and proxy process is controlled by the management. Many times, rebellious shareholders pursue to change management. Those shareholders have become successful in proxy battle, receive compensation for their proxy solicitation. The second problem is that shareholders don't work collectively, otherwise their collective actions may lead to some fruitful results. In large corporations, the voting share of each shareholder is very negligible fraction of outstanding voting share. Each shareholder expect that there would be very negligible effect of each of their voting on the outcome of any voting contest. Sometimes in a proxy battle, some shareholders spend some amount of money, time and effort to understand the situation. This is a phenomena of rational apathy. However, current management is voted by most of the shareholders. Thus, no challenge, no matter how meritorious, will have very less probability to succeed. Now we will discuss Williamson's theory of managerial discretion. Oliver E. Williamson, in his theory of managerial discretion, advocated that managers are least bothered about profit maximization of the firms, and thus profit maximization is not the objective of managers in large corporations. The fundamental assumption on which this theory is based are: managers are motivated by self-interest. Managers try to maximize their utility. The first assumption is valid only in case of large corporation where the managers are motivated by their self-interest and try to maximize their own utility. Because in large corporation, ownership and control are separated from each other. The manager rarely bothers about utility maximization of shareholders. Rather, use his discretion to implement policies which will favor him in maximizing his own utility. Sometimes managers face job insecurity if he is unable to achieve a minimum level of profit to be distributed among shareholders as dividends. Some of the working assumptions of Williamson's model of discretion are: market is assumed to be imperfectly competitive. There exists separation between ownership and management. There exists a minimum profit constraint in the fact that the shareholders get at least a minimum dividend. Now we will discuss about managerial discretionary model. In managerial discretionary model, the utility function according to Williamson depends upon factors such as salaries and other form of monetary compensation, number of staff under the control of a manager, management slack, magnitude of discretionary investment expenditure by the manager. First factor is salaries and other form of monetary compensation. Salary and other monetary compensation play an important role in determining the utility function of the managers. The standard of living and day-to-day expenditure of the manager depends upon their salaries. Thus, managers' decision regarding price and output in many times bias toward their salaries, bonus, increments, etc. Second factor is number of staff under the control of a manager. Manager's utility function depends upon number of staff under the control of him. A large number of staff under the control of manager will have significantly positive impact on salary and other monetary reward of manager. Power and prestige of the manager will rise with rising number of staff under their control. Thus, number of staff under the control of a manager significantly affects the utility function of manager. Third factor on which utility depends, according to Williamson, is management slack. Management slack also affects utility function of manager significantly. Some of the non-essential advantages, such as luxurious company cars, well-furnished offices, more than required number of office clerk and attendant, etc., are known as management slack. Management slacks are not necessarily essential for effective and efficient operation of business. Fourth factor is magnitude of discretionary investment expenditure by the manager. Magnitude of discretionary investment expenditure is the resources that the manager can invest in the plant by using his discretionary power. The command over resources which manager enjoys is the magnitude of discretionary expenditure which manager can utilize as per his discretion. Thus, magnitude of discretionary investment expenditure by the manager plays an important role in determining utility function of the manager. Besides, power, prestige, job security, status in society, dominance on other colleague, and professional excellence of managers play important role in affecting their utility. The managerial utility function. As mentioned above, the utility of a manager is affected by factors such as monetary expenditure on the staff, management slack, and discretionary investment. Thus, the utility of a manager is functionally related to these factors so that mathematically we can write U is function of S, M, and ID, where U is the utility function, S monetary expenditure on the staff, M the management slack, and ID is discretionary investment. As mentioned above, monetary expenditure on staff includes manager's salary, salary of the staff, and other monetary compensation that the manager received. Management slack are the incentives which enhance their power and social prestige, without which manager can quit the job. Thus, these are the lavish expenditure that keeps manager always happy in terms, power and prestige. This expenditure includes luxurious vehicles, large expense accounts, lavishly well-furnished office and residential quarter, entertainment expenses, etc. The magnitude of resources that is left at a manager's disposal with his discretion that he can utilize it for investment is discretionary investment. Concepts of profits in the managerial discretionary model. There are various concepts of profit used in Williamson's managerial discretionary model. They are actual profit, reported profit, minimum profit, and discretionary profit. In order to understand Williamson's managerial discretionary model, various concepts of profit need to be understood first. Actual profit in Williamson model is total revenue minus total cost, including staff expenditure. Thus, total revenue less cost of production and staff expenditure is actual profit. Mathematically, we can write pi is equal to R minus C minus S, where R is total revenue, C is cost of production, and S is staff expenditure, while pi is actual profit. Reported profit is reported by the manager, which is controlled at his discretion. It is the actual profit less non-essential managerial expenditure, that is actual profit over and above management slack. This can be written mathematically as pi r is equal to pi minus m, where pi r is reported profit, pi is actual profit, m is management slack. Putting the value of pi in equation 3, we get pi r is equal to r minus c minus s minus m. This equation 4 states that reported profit is the revenue less sum of cost of production, staff expenditure, and management slack. Minimum profit in Williamson model is the acceptable dividend of the shareholders. The amount of profit after tax which the shareholders of the firm accept satisfactorily as dividend is known to Williamson as minimum profit. The shareholders sometimes think of bulk sale of their shares, as a result of which ownership of the firm changes, leaving it to risk of complete takeover. The shareholders have voting rights and can change the top management by using their voting rights if they are unhappy with the activities of the managers. The managers feel insecure about their jobs also. Thus, in order to avoid these situations and to keep shareholders always happy, a minimum amount of profit is given to them as acceptable dividend. In view of this, managers always try to keep reported profit greater than or at least equal to the sum of minimum profit and tax to be paid to the government. The reported profits remain either equal to or greater than the minimum profit plus the taxes, because additional profit after paying out the minimum profit is used to positively affect the managerial utility function. Thus, in Williamson's model, the relationship between reported profit, minimum profit, and tax to be paid to the government can be written mathematically as pi r is greater than equal to pi 0 plus t, where pi r are reported profits, pi 0 is minimum profit, and t is government tax. After minimum profit and tax, the amount left with manager is discretionary profit. This is the entire amount of profit which is left after distributing the minimum profit among the shareholders and payment of government tax. Discretionary profit increases the utility of the managers as they get their emoluments and make discretionary investment out of it. Discretionary profit can be written as pi d is equal to pi minus pi 0 minus t, where pi is the actual profit, pi 0 the minimum profit, t the government tax, and pi d is discretionary profits. In managerial utility function, discretionary investment doesn't enter at discretionary profit. Distinguishing between these two will help us in modeling managerial utility function that need to be maximized with given profit constraint. Discretionary investment can be defined as amount of surplus left with manager over and above the sum of minimum profit and government tax. Discretionary investment is reported as profit less minimum profit and government tax. This is written mathematically as ID is equal to pi r minus pi 0 minus t, where ID is discretionary investment, pi r reported profit, pi 0 minimum profit, and t is government tax. The factor management slack brings the difference between discretionary profit and discretionary investment. This can be derived from equation 6 and equation 7 as follows. Subtracting equation 7 from equation 6, we get pi d minus id is equal to pi minus pi 0 minus t minus pi r minus pi 0 minus t, or pi d minus id is equal to pi minus pi r, or pi d is equal to pi minus pi r plus id. Using equation 3, we get pi d is equal to pi minus m plus id, or pi d is equal to m plus id. Equation 8 states that it is management slack that makes the difference between discretionary profit and discretionary investment. Now we will consider modeling managerial utility in absence of management slack. In absence of management slack, the discretionary profit and discretionary investment will be equal to each other. The impact of absence of management slack on managerial utility function is explained below. If management slack is 0, that is m is equal to 0, then from equation 8 we get pi d is equal to id. Similarly, for m is equal to 0, we get from equation 3 that pi r is equal to pi. Thus, when management slack is 0, equation 9 and equation 10 state that there is no difference between reported profit and actual profit, as a result of which discretionary profit equals discretionary investment. Now, the utility function of manager in absence of management slack will be u, a function of s and it, where u is utility function of manager, s staff expenditure, and id is discretionary investment. According to Williamson, the sum of staff expenditure and discretionary investment remain same at any point of time, indicating that there is a trade-off between the two. Keeping one variable constant, if another variable rises, then manager's utility will rise. However, because of trade-off, when one variable rises, other variable will fall in order to maintain the level of utility of the manager constant. Therefore, in order to maintain the utility at desired level, the manager make a choice of correct combination of these two variables. Substituting discretionary investment in equation 11, we get u is a function of s pi minus pi 0 minus t, where discretionary investment id is equal to pi minus pi 0 minus t. Profit function determines the relationship between two variables, such as between staff expenditure and discretionary investment in the manager's utility function. Demand and cost condition of products determine the profit level of a firm. Demand of the product is functionally dependent upon the prices, staff expenditure, and the market condition. However, at different point of equilibrium, price and market condition is assumed to be given exogenously, so that we can write the demand function as x, which is a function of s, p bar, and e bar, where x is quantity demanded of the product of the firm, s is staff expenditure, p bar and e bar are exogenous price and market conditions respectively. For exogenously given price and market condition, profit of the firm is functionally dependent on staff expenditure. This can be written mathematically as pi is a function of x, which is a function of s, p bar, and e bar. Now comparing equation 6 and equation 14, we can rewrite discretionary profit as pi d as a function of s, p bar, e bar minus pi 0 minus t. Now the manager can maximize his utility function subject to the profit constraint. The utility maximization function subject to profit constraint can be written as maximize u which is a function of s pi minus pi 0 minus t, subject to pi r is greater than equal to pi 0 plus t. The graphical explanation of the model is also given as follows. Now we will look at the graphical representation of the model. Let us assume that U1, U2, U3 are various levels of utility that the manager derive from their associated combination of discretionary profit and staff expenditure respectively. The utility combinations are shown in the following figure in terms of indifference curves. Higher level of indifference curve will give higher level of satisfaction to the manager. Thus, in order to maximize utility, the managers try to be on the highest level of indifference curve with given profit constraint. In the following figure, x-axis show the staff expenditure, y-axis show discretionary profit, and various combinations of both are shown on various indifference curves. We assume here that discretionary profit is equal to discretionary investment. We have also assumed the downward sloping indifference curve just like conventional indifference curve. Thus, the marginal rate of substitution between staff expenditure and discretionary profit diminishes as the consumer moves on the indifference curve from left to right. We have plotted the indifference curves in such a way that they are asymptotic towards both the axes. This implies that the choice of combination of discretionary profit and staff expenditure will always be positive at any point of time and also under any given circumstance. We have generated the discretionary profit curve shown in the following figure with the assumption that optimal level of output is produced by the firm with given market condition. The relationship between discretionary profit and staff expenditure is shown in the profit curve in the following figure. Figure shows that initially profit curve increases with increase in staff expenditure and discretionary profit reaches the maximum at point pi maximum and then starts falling along with rising staff expenditure and falling discretionary profit. Thus, profit is only maximum when staff expenditure reaches point S, and at this point, discretionary profit also reaches maximum. But profit start falling beyond point S due to further rising staff expenditure due to rising output. Beyond point S, discretionary profit also fall due to falling profit. It has been observed from figure that profit remain positive when staff expenditure remains in between the point B and C. The minimum profit constraint is not satisfied at staff expenditure less than B and at staff expenditure more than C due to profit in both cases becoming negative, which threaten the job security of the managers. In order to determine the equilibrium of the firm, we superimposed earlier two figures as which shown in the following figure. The firm will attain equilibrium at the point where the profit curve will be tangent to the highest possible indifference curve of the manager. Figure shows that at point E, the firm attains equilibrium because profit curve make tangent with highest indifference curve U3. The manager could stay in the highest profit point at pi maximum, but at this point, manager's utility cannot be maximized as he would have to stay in lower indifference curve U2. At equilibrium point E, staff expenditure S star is higher, leading to lower profit than the staff expenditure S at profit maximizing point pi max. The equilibrium point will always be to the right of the profit maximizing output because the indifference curves are downward sloping from left to right. Thus, Williamson tried to prove through this model that managers try to maximize their utility, not profit, by moving to highest indifference curves, though staff expenditure is rising at this point.
Let us summarize the discussion we have done so far. Behavior and role of managers in large corporations are considered as main factors for successfully deciding how much output to be produced once market price is decided. Generally, owner of the firm takes decision of price, output and other business activities if the firm is small and there is individual partnership and proprietorship. In large corporations, it has been observed that there is a separation between ownership and management. Generally, shareholders are considered as owner of the joint stock companies who bear the business risk, whereas decision on price and output determination is undertaken by hired managers. An individual proprietor, being the only owner of his firm, tries to maximize profit, whereas the manager of a joint stock company don't bother regarding profit maximization of the company. Oliver E. Williamson, in his theory of managerial discretion, advocated that managers are least bothered about profit maximization of the firms, and thus profit maximization is not the objective of managers in large corporation. The utility of a manager is affected by factors such as monetary expenditure on the staff, management, slack and discretionary investment. Actual profit in Williamson model is the total revenue minus total cost, including staff expenditure. Reported profit is the actual profit less non-essential managerial expenditure, that is actual profit over and above the management slack. Minimum profit in Williamson model is the acceptable dividend of the shareholder. The amount of profit after tax which the shareholders of the firm accept satisfactorily as dividend is known to Williamsons as minimum profit. Minimum profit is the entire amount of profit which is left after distributing the minimum profit among the shareholders and payment of government tax. Discretionary investment is reported profit less minimum profit and government tax. In absence of management slack, the discretionary profit and discretionary investment will be equal to each other. The utility function of manager in absence of management slack will be functionally dependent on staff expenditure and discretionary investment. According to Williamson, the sum of staff expenditure and discretionary investment remains same at any point of time, indicating that there is a trade-off between the two. Profit function determines the relationship between two variables such as between staff expenditure and discretionary investment in the manager's utility function. For exogenously given price and market conditions, profit of the firm is functionally dependent on staff expenditure. The manager can maximize his utility function subject to the profit constraint.